Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Seoul's first snow of the season last evening caused a major commuter crisis, as a sudden burst of snowfall led many drivers to abandon their cars and head for the subway, while some passengers stuck on buses chose to get off and walk. South Korea says it's not considering linking the release of its citizens detained in North Korea with the repatriation of unconverted long-term prisoners of war in the South. This comes after a news report cited Seoul's national security advisor as saying the government is weighing the possibility of connecting the two issues. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow will take Ukraine's Donbas region by force, rejecting any compromise to end the Ukraine war. And amid U.S. efforts to put an end to the prolonged war, Putin also said his 5-hour talks with American envoys at the Kremlin on Tuesday were useful, but also difficult work. We begin this morning with the first snow of the season in the capital that turned into a major evening commute disaster due to a sudden burst of heavy snowfall and icy road conditions. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
Seoul's first snow of the season turned into a major commuter crisis on Thursday evening as a sudden burst of heavy snowfall and icy road conditions caught people off guard. What began as light flurries quickly intensified, sending workers rushing home in frustration rather than excitement. Snowfall thickened within minutes. With visibility low and cars barely moving, commuters voiced complaints that the first snow felt more like a full winter storm. Many abandoned their cars and switched to taking the subway, creating severe crowding underground. Some passengers trapped on buses chose to get off and walk. A heavy snow advisory issued for all of Seoul at 6 p.m. was lifted 2 hours later, but the impact lasted far longer. One office worker reported that a 30-minute commute stretched to 3 hours. Many also expressed frustration over the lack of de-icing work, despite snow being forecast.
There's no de-icing done and the buses are stuck and blocking everything. The roads have not melted at all, and if the temperature drops any further, this whole area might turn into ice. It is honestly terrifying.
As roads froze, multiple accidents were reported, and residents criticized Seoul City and the surrounding regions for snow removal efforts that appeared ineffective against the snowstorm. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok received an emergency briefing and ordered an immediate, coordinated response. According to the Prime Minister's office, he directed the Ministry of the Interior and Safety to work with Seoul City and other local governments to begin rapid snow removal and de-icing on major roads. He also instructed authorities to impose traffic controls and detours when needed. The Korea Expressway Corporation and the National Police Agency were instructed to ensure highways remained safe by implementing immediate de-icing and detour guidance. Local governments were told to stabilize public transportation by extending subway services, rerouting buses, and preparing emergency shuttle options. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea says it's not considering linking the release of its citizens detained in North Korea with the repatriation of unconverted long-term prisoners here, but it will address each of them. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
The South Korean government is planning to repatriate unconverted long-term North Korean prisoners of war on humanitarian grounds and is reviewing related measures. But it is not going to happen via a swap with South Korean detainees held by the regime. This is according to a Unification Ministry statement on Thursday, which followed an NK News report that cited Seoul's national security advisor and stated that Seoul was mulling linking the two issues. There are up to 6 elderly North Koreans here who have yet to renounce their communist beliefs. And one of them, Anak-sup, who is in his 90s, recently called for repatriation to the north. The Unification Ministry said it recognizes the urgent need to resolve the detainee issue and that it was trying to address it through dialogue with the north. Currently, a total of 6 South Korean nationals are known to have been detained by the regime between 2013 and 2016. 3 missionaries, Kim Jong-uk, Kim Guk-gi, and Chae Chun-gil, and 3 North Korean defectors. When inter-Korean dialogue was taking place, the South raised the issue with the North multiple times. For example, during the inter-Korean high-level talks held in June 2018, the then unification minister brought the matter up, and North Korea's chief delegate said that related agencies were thoroughly reviewing it. The ministry said it is in regular contact with the families of the detainees, noting that in late September, Unification Minister Chung Dong-young met with the missionaries' families. International cooperation is underway as well. One expert says there is little possibility of resolving the issue promptly, as Pyongyang has officially pronounced that the two Koreas are two hostile states, although it is meaningful to constantly raise the issue.
Keeping the detainee issue in the public spotlight can put pressure on North Korea. Even though it's hard for North Korea to respond positively right now, this attention might make them look at the issue again. And if it helps reopen inter-Korean talks, the detainee issue could become one of the first topics on the agenda.
For now, the detainees' whereabouts and whether they are alive or not remain completely unknown. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin once again threatened to take Ukraine's eastern region by force if Kyiv does not comply to its demands. Meanwhile, as the U.S. continues its efforts to strike a deal to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Putin said his recent talks with U.S. envoys were useful. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
Russian leader Vladimir Putin has warned that Moscow will seize Ukraine's eastern region of Donbas if Ukrainian troops do not withdraw from the area. This came in an interview with India Today, before the Russian leader left for a trip to New Delhi. He told the Indian Daily that he intends to liberate Donbas and Novorossiya at any cost, by military or other means, according to Russian state media TASS. Amid the United States' efforts to end the near 4 years of war, the Kremlin has been demanding Ukraine hand over territory in the Donbas region, 85% of which is currently under Russian control. This comes after US President Donald Trump claimed his negotiators believe the Russian leader would like to end the war after talks over a peace plan in Moscow on Tuesday. Last week, the Trump administration's 28-point draft proposal was leaked and criticized for largely reflecting the Kremlin's main demands, including Ukraine giving up territory, limiting its military, and dropping its efforts to join NATO. The proposal has reportedly been revised since then, with input from Kyiv and European nations, but the details have not been disclosed. Putin said his 5-hour talks with US envoys at the Kremlin on Tuesday were necessary and useful, but also difficult work. While deeming some proposals unacceptable, Putin said he believed the US leader is sincere.
We had a feeling, and even more than a feeling. I had no doubt that President Trump has sincere desire. Well, let's not talk about what's the cause of it, but what dictated this sincere desire, but it is there, in place for sure. The United States and President Trump, indeed, they have their own understanding of why it needs to end, and as soon as possible.
Putin has previously said he is generally on board with Trump's proposals as a basis for future agreements, while threatening continued military advancement should Ukraine refuse to comply. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has refused to cede territory and has called for a security guarantee from the West. Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff is due to meet Ukraine's team in Florida after returning from Moscow. According to German news outlet Der Spiegel, European leaders are skeptical of Trump's peace deal efforts. On Thursday, the publication reported that in a call between Zelensky and other European leaders, French President Emmanuel Macron warned that the United States could betray Kyiv on territorial concessions without clarity on security guarantees. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reportedly told Zelensky that US negotiators are, quote, playing games, and that he should be very careful for the next few days. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Today, December 5th, marks Trade Day here in South Korea, aimed at promoting exports and recognizing the achievements of companies and individuals that contributed to the nation's trade. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Oh Jun-seok, Dean at the College of Economics and Business at Sookmeng Women's University. Professor Oh, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So South Korea's exports are on track to reach a historic milestone, right, in trade, $700 billion for the first time. What's driving this surge?
Despite trade uncertainty of the Trump administration, Korea's historic 700 billion milestone is primarily driven by two factors. The one is robust global demand for a key technology product, and the other comes from the diversification strategy of Korean companies. As for robust global demand for first semiconductor exports were the key performance driver, surging 38.6% year-on-year in November. This represents the highest monthly semiconductor export figure ever recorded. And the global AI boom, both physical AI and sovereign AI, and expanded investment in AI server and data centers have created massive demand for high-value memory semiconductors. Next is a car industry, which has also contributed to strong performance with a rise in sales of hybrid and electric models particularly. Firm's diversification strategy of market and product helps trade volume to hold the position in the midst of a torrent. As for market diversification, Korean companies tried in many ways to diversify export to destination with notable growth in shipment to the EU area, Asian countries, and India. This has helped to mitigate some regional trade challenges under uncertainty. Export to China and the ASEAN increased by 6.9% and 6.3% respectively. Such as K-beauty product and K-food can be examples of production diversification, which has also increased the global popularity with export in this category, crossing the $10 billion US dollar threshold for the first time. But the outlook of international trade is not that bright due to comparative geopolitical tension. Korea needs economic diplomacy within the collaborative framework of regional integration, such as CPTPP or RCEP, more than ever.
Right, you just mentioned that semiconductor was the main key driver. So the country has seen a particularly sharp surge in chip exports. How long do you expect the semiconductor boom to continue, and what's your outlook for next year?
It is true the Korean economy has been on a recovery track, as well as improving consumer sentiment. The current semiconductor boom is widely expected to continue with strong growth. Analysis of BOK and WSTS projected continued strong momentum for the global semiconductor market. Memory chip price, especially for HBM used in AI, are expected to remain elevated until the end of 2026. And even further 2027. The WSTS forecast market growth of over 25% for 2026, with the total market size approaching $1 trillion US by 2030. We've experienced till now the semiconductor upcycle usually lasts around 2 years, but the current one may be prolonged by the global AI boom. This super cycle is mainly driven by exponential demand for AI servers, a shift from past cycle driven by smartphone or PCs. But despite the current boom, it should be noted that the semiconductor industry is historically cyclical, typically experiencing a boom-burst cycle lasting approximately 4 years. So the market might be experience a bumpy ride over the next few years with potential for slowdown after 2026. In addition, we have to count in such geopolitical tensions. Reforming AI supply chain and realignment of AI value chain remains as a significant factors that could impact the market's trajectory.
I see. And, tariffs on South Korean cars exported to the U.S. have now officially been lowered to 15%, and the change will now take effect retroactively to November 1st. What impact will this have on Korean automakers shipping to the United States?
It's a good news. Uncertainties surrounding Korea's export have partially eased as the U.S. confirmed the lowering of tariff. But news of the tariff reduction led promptly to a sharp rise in the stock price of Hyundai and Kia Motors, reflecting investor relief and improved earnings outlook for the company. The move will allow Korean automakers to compete on a more equal footing with rivals from Japan and European Union, who also faced a 15% tariff. Prior to the tariff reduction, Korean cars faced a 10% point higher tariff than Japan rivals, which raised their price advantage. But while the 15% tariff is lower than the 25%, still make Korean cars less competitive compared to those from countries not subject to the same tariff. In this way, reciprocal tariff will increase cost of for Korean automakers shipping to the U.S., making their vehicle less competitive. This move also means automakers must adjust their supply chain and may lead to a higher price for U.S. Customers. The new tariff will disrupt already established globally integrated supply chain, forcing companies to reevaluate and change their sourcing and just-in-time delivery models. It might be likely, I guess, to give momentum for car makers not to adjust the supply chain, but separately and independently from the U.S. market, targeting for the EU market to make a pivot into the new EV supply chain earlier than expected.
I see. All right, Professor, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
South Korea's 30-month-long current account surplus continued in October, but the surplus was about 50% lower than in September. The Bank of Korea announced on Friday that the preliminary current account surplus registered for October stood at $6.81 billion. The drop was largely due to fewer working days during the extended Chuseok holiday and the absence of large one-off exports of ships. Exports were down 17% from September and fell 4.7% compared to the same period the year before. Imports also fell by 5% compared to the same period last year. The current account shows the balance of imports and exports as well as other money flows into and out of the country. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities have arrested a suspect accused of planting 2 pipe bombs outside the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters on the eve of the January 6th riot in 2021. The Justice Department says 30-year-old Virginia resident Brian Cole Jr. was taken into custody without incident and has been charged with using an explosive device with additional charges possible. The arrest follows nearly 5 years of investigation involving 3 million lines of data and a $500,000 reward. Authorities traced phone records, CCTV footage, and purchase histories tying Cole to bomb-making materials. The devices never detonated and were discovered as rioters breached the Capitol. Meanwhile, Google Korea announced Thursday the top search words of the year based on which keywords saw the largest increase among Korean users. The company says 2025 search trends show a strong turn toward active interest in politics, the economy, government policy, and major social issues. Searches related to public support programs grew sharply, making the application method for the government's livelihood recovery consumer coupon the #1 rising query in the how-to category. 2025 presidential election became the fastest growing search term in the news category, and K-content also continued its global momentum. In the film sector, KPop Demon Hunters ranked first, followed by Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Washington on Thursday, U.S. President Donald Trump hosted the signing of a peace deal between the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, aiming to end years of conflict in the eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo. The agreement was endorsed by the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, alongside several African leaders. The summit followed intense fighting between the Congolese army and the Rwandan-backed Congolese M23 rebels, who were not present and continue to hold key areas in the east of the country. Both sides pledged to address two core demands: disarming the Rwandan rebel group FDLR militia and withdrawing Rwandan troops from DR Congo. Analysts warn a ceasefire is still absent and M23 expansion remains a major obstacle to lasting peace. Now to Pakistan, where Afghan refugees said Thursday a decision by U.S. President Donald Trump to halt access to green cards, citizenship, and special immigrant visas have left them with no safe pathway out of Pakistan. According to Afghan journalist and human rights activist Ihsan Ullan Ahmadzai, the ruling gives authorities in Pakistan a green light to continue enforcing orders to remove undocumented foreigners, including refugees who wish to relocate to the U.S. In the United States, the Trump administration ordered a pause on immigration processing for 19 travel-ban countries on Tuesday, a move that followed the shooting of two National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. The suspect being held for the attack is an Afghan national. Refugees say the decision places their cases in indefinite limbo, despite many fleeing after the Taliban takeover in 2021. In India on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Delhi for his first visit since the war in Ukraine began nearly 4 years ago. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally met him at the airport, a rare gesture as the two leaders begin a two-day summit focused on expanding economic and defense ties. Putin's trip comes as India faces its most difficult geopolitical climate in years, amid tensions with China, weakened ties with the U.S., and Western pressure over its Russian oil purchases. Formal talks between Modi and Putin are scheduled for Friday. Across the world this week, the cold supermoon, the last supermoon of 2025, reached its peak on Thursday. The cold moon will also appear bright and full tonight. Astronomers say it is the second biggest full moon of the year and climbs higher in the sky than any other full moon as the winter solstice nears. The next supermoon will be the wolf moon on January 3rd, 2026.
Seoul saw its first snow of the season yesterday, and it was not a gentle start. The snow came down heavily right from the beginning, with a heavy snow advisory issuing for the capital area. And from blizzard chaos to an icy cold morning, the freezing temperatures were causing some headaches for many commuters with the frozen road. And for today, skies will be mostly clear across the country. However, on the East Coast, the air is still very dry with strong winds, so please be careful with anything that could start a fire. And this afternoon, highs will be similar to yesterday. Seoul getting up to 2 degrees, Daegu topping out at 7 degrees. Now the cold will get eased starting this weekend with temperatures recovering to near normal. However, brief snow showers are expected across parts of the central region tomorrow, so please keep that in mind for weekend plans.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.